Water utility Rand Water says its systems are dropping fast as a result of extremely high water consumption from customers in Gauteng. It says there are high levels of consumption by the cities of Johannesburg and Tshwane. Now, adding to the crisis, Rand Water said electricity outages have further compromised water supply operations. Now, this crisis underscores the long-standing challenges facing water infrastructure in Gauteng. Both Johannesburg and Tshwane have historically struggled with aging infrastructure, frequent pipe bursts and inadequate investment in maintenance and upgrades. But for more of this, we are joined by Rand Water spokesperson, Makenosi Maroo. Makenosi, thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it here on the program.
Thank you, Leanne, for having us, and good morning to you and good morning to your listeners.
So, Makenosi, Rand Water, I know what you've come out urging customers is to reduce their usage to avert a system collapse. And the system collapse is what is really worrying. How far are we away from a total system collapse?
Leanne, if we follow the trajectory and we don't make any changes, the system will collapse. But Rand Water, obviously, as an organization, we are trying to protect the integrity of our system. So if we reach a certain level in terms of the levels of our reservoirs, we will change, we will ensure that levels are introduced from Rand Water's side. At the moment, we are giving the 3 metros an opportunity to introduce levels from their sides, to introduce restrictions, to ensure that there are interventions so that we manage the consumption.
In percentage terms, perhaps you can give us an idea of how much water has, in terms of storage, has dropped.
Right. Okay. Just to give you context, if we say our levels or our reservoir levels are healthy, we are sitting at 80%. We are comfortable. We know that we are able to supply water. So for different reservoirs, we are sitting at some levels are 40%, others are about 30%. So the levels have dropped significantly. I mean, if you can imagine, we dropped from 80 to 60, and then we are seeing that level in terms of a downward trajectory, despite us trying to communicate with municipalities. So in other areas, we're talking about 20%, but we will not go further than that.
Sure, that is petrifying. I mean, where they should be over 80, but we're sitting at 20, 30, 40. I mean, this is a dire situation, and there's no getting around it. But one of the questions I need to ask you is, what are we dealing with? Because we're saying we're at a collapse. You're urging Gauteng residents to stop using so much water. But how much is it due to overconsumption of consumers or the aging infrastructure? Because everywhere I look, I see burst pipes, water bursting out of the roads. And I mean, this is thousands upon thousands of litres that is being lost. So where does the blame lie? I mean, the majority of the blame.
You know, these 2 matters that you refer to, they are actually interlinked, because if you're saying there is high consumption, one needs to ask a question, why there is high consumption? Is it because we're using too much water, or is it because there are leakages in the system? This is where we're saying aging infrastructure. Municipalities need to invest in their infrastructure. I know some municipalities are trying. I know that Johannesburg is working on that. I know that City of Tshwane, they're also working on actually improving their infrastructure. So it's both. Yes, the consumption is high, but what is causing the consumption? Sometimes it's pipes that are leaking. Sometimes it's just taps that are leaking. So these are actually linked, if I can put it that way. And if one area, because our system, as I was indicating, it's interlinked. So if one area is consuming too much water, there will be an impact in other areas. If other areas are actually consuming enough within their quotas, if other areas are not in line with what we have prescribed in terms of license quotas, it will affect other small municipalities.
Yeah. So let's look at the consumption. I found some very interesting graphics that you have supplied from Rand Water, just to show the water consumption. So if you can perhaps talk to us about, I know you haven't seen the graphics, so but they are from Rand Water. But what I want to gather is How many milliliters per day should we be using as opposed to what we are using? Maybe this will give people an indication of how difficult the situation actually is.
Okay, I have seen the graphs, and if I have to explain the graph, let me just look at City of Tshwane, just to give an example. We always give two lines. So we'll have a green line to say this is where you are supposed to be, and then we'll also give you a red line to show that, look, we have exceeded what you're supposed to be actually consuming. But when it comes to consumption, let's say how many liters a person should be consuming per day, we are consuming more than we're supposed to be consuming as compared to what other countries are consuming. I know in Gauteng we are close to 300 liters per day per person. That's too much water if we have to look at that. But it goes back to that point. Is it consumption or is it part of the leaks that we are witnessing in various municipalities?
And these are the important points. But I do appreciate people seeing what's actually happening in a form like this because, as you say, red is the norm. Green is where we probably should be, but look where we're at. I mean, this is, obviously there was a drop in consumption at one stage, and I think that was over December. But I mean, we are way above where we should be. I mean, people using far too much water. However, and I'm glad we've shown that to our viewers, but what about people, and you heard voice messages coming through. I know you were waiting and you were as surprised as we were. Communities that have not had water for 2 years. I mean, this is unacceptable. I mean, some of these communities, we're talking about Palm Ridge, Coronationville, Westbury. I mean, how is this possible?
It is unacceptable. And one would ask, why do we have companies or organizations like Rainwater? If somebody would say, I haven't had water for 2 years, does it mean Rainwater has not been working? We have been working. We have been supplying water. Remember, we are a bulk water supply. So we supply municipalities with water. So what happens is, for example, let me just talk about City of Johannesburg. We have our pipelines, we have our bulk meters. So we will purify water and then we'll move water from our reservoirs into a municipal reservoir. This way, our responsibility ends as Rainwater. Then a municipality will start distributing water to various areas. So if somebody says, I haven't had water for 2 years, one needs to go back to their municipality to understand precisely what is the challenge, why is it taking so long. It cannot be 2 years without water, or people have to wake up at 4 o'clock to get water. If there are challenges, if there is maintenance shouldn't take more than 2 weeks. The longest, if it would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but we need to communicate. We need to have contingency plans in place so that people still have water while we're doing maintenance.
Day zero. Everybody asks this question. I mean, we're warning of a complete breakdown of the system, but people are also worried about the fact. I mean, we talk about a collapse of the system, but is day zero possible if there is no improvement in terms of water consumption?
Leanne, we're really trying to prevent day zero. It is possible, but we are ensuring that it's not going to be happening in our areas of supply. What we're going to be doing is if it comes to that push, we'll have to throttle the system. What we're saying is we'll not allow our reservoirs to run completely empty. We'd rather have times where we are supplying water to municipalities rather than to say we don't have water completely in the system. So you can imagine if we have to say all the reservoirs are empty, it's going to take us forever to fill up those reservoirs. We will throttle the system if municipalities are failing to manage the consumption. We will throttle the system. We'll ensure that municipalities are abiding by the rules that we are going to be introducing. Obviously, we are having those engagements with them, especially the 3 metros. The 3 metros, why we're emphasizing them is because they are consuming over 70% of the water that we are supplying. So we are really focusing on the 3 metros, not because other small municipalities are not consuming or over-consuming, but the focus is on the 3 metros because they are consuming more of our water. So we will ensure that there is no day zero. And if it comes to that point, we will get water from other dams. But if the day zero is what people are talking about, what happened in Cape Town, we will not be allowing that to happen. We will not allow our systems to run dry. We need to protect the integrity of our system. I mean, water is different from electricity.
Very much so.
If we have to run completely dry, for us to fill up those pipelines, it's going to take days. Often we get bubbles, we get problems in the system if the system is too dry for too long. So we really are trying to prevent that. Hence, we are communicating. Hence, we are warning municipalities and residents.
The Rand Water Vereeniging water treatment plant, I mean, this was affected by a total power supply failure at Mfuleni Power Substation. The
That's
areas
correct.
that have been affected by this, and also where are we with this? I mean, are we going to see this water system started again, that people can start getting water?
People are starting to get water. Just to give you context to what happened precisely at Mfuleni, we have a water treatment plant in Vereeniging. We are supplied by Mfuleni local municipality in terms of power. So we are reliant on Mfuleni. So when we had that power outage, it was because of a transformer that belongs to Mfuleni. So we could not pump water on the 11th for a couple of hours. And then we had a second trip on the same system. So it affected Ekenhof, it affected small municipalities. Rand West was affected, Mfuleni obviously was affected, Benoni, the Royal Bafokeng, Rand West, Metsimaholo, and other municipalities. So we are now recovering, we are in a recovery system so that people are starting to get water, beginning to get water.
Yeah.
But also, Leanne, we are looking at a long-term plan to say, we don't have to rely on municipalities with regards to power, because we are realizing that somehow we are being failed because we are not able to supply water if there is no electricity. So we are looking at long-term plan to ensure that we are self-reliant when it comes to electricity or to power.
Well, this is a very dire situation, and we know that we've just spoken about Johannesburg and Tshwane, but it goes far beyond that, and that's the reality of the situation. It's not just here. This is very far. But Makenosi, thank you for talking to us. Makenosi Maroo is Rand Water spokesperson, speaking about water storage that is rapidly declining owing to the high water consumption, and there's a major risk of a system collapse if something is not done about this. It's a great worry at the moment.